You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Catholic Mama podcast. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Thank you for joining me on this episode where I know as the title of the episode, I already know what it's going to be as I'm recording it. It's, how to go from a full-time office worker to a full-time mom. But I will say, because I was a full-time office worker and a mom at the same time, of course, no matter where you work or how much you work inside or outside the home, you're always a full-time mom. It's just a catchy way to title this podcast. But no, I'm with you. If you are working in an office and you have children, it doesn't matter if you're working in that office 15 hours a week up to 60 hours a week. You're a full-time mom no matter what on top of that. That is the base. Being a mother is the base. That is the work. And then you just do stuff on top of it. Maybe. I remember hearing once years ago that it isn't motherhood that is so hard. It's the otherhood. It's the other stuff. And, I always knew growing up that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, or at least, maybe work at home a little bit, but the focus, my attention throughout the day, I wanted to be able to spend on my children. I was very blessed growing up to have a mother who stayed home. My dad, we lived off a single income for my entire childhood. My mom I remember she was my substitute teacher one time. So she went through some training course and did subbing for maybe a month and then realized she didn't like it. So she did that. But it was just, we'd come home off the school bus and my mom would be there, and she would be there if we were sick and couldn't go to school. And she made a home. She was a homemaker, and it was a very beautiful thing. And I always knew that that's what I wanted. And she always said that she was glad that, it wasn't that she hated being home. She kept busy. She's a very hands-on, crafty person, arts and crafts, I should say, not like a sly person. She always kept herself busy. She was always doing wonderful things for us. And, if we happened to, we would do if career day came up and say my dad couldn't do it, or every other time, we would just, no matter what, spend it with my mom. And she would show us various skills of what she would do during the day, what her schedule was like, how to balance a checkbook. So I got a lot of cool hands-on learning and a real appreciation of the life of a woman who stays home and cares for her family that way. And it was also very interesting as I've gotten older and we've transitioned to that in our own family, to see the trust and what's the right word for it? At least we'll start with there. The trust that my dad had in his ability to care for the family from a financial standpoint on his own, and the trust that he had in my mother that she would do a good job at home as well. She wasn't just lazing about watching soap operas all day. I got to say, until I was much older, and, she was home alone a lot. I noticed, as my brother and I aged and moved out, then she would have, QVC or the Food Network or something on in the background, just as nice noise to keep her company in the day. But for the most part, my mom did not sit around. I rarely saw her sit on the couch. She was up, she was doing things, and I could see that it was real work, but it was also something that brought her real joy. So I always had a wonderful idea of what a stay-at-home mother can be, and I always wanted to be one. Should I have kids? It's very funny because I didn't always want to have children. I actually thought for a long time I would never have kids. The world was too messed up as it is. Who was I to bring? Oh, I hated going through puberty too. That being fresh on my mind, I was like, I would never bring my kids willingly into this world just to suffer. It stinks too much. Not doing it. And of course, the Lord has different plans for me, and I am now the mother of 4 children. And I worked in an office for the first, until my 3rd child was almost a year old. I left my office job May of that particular year, and my 3rd youngest turned 1 that July. So, for the first, I guess, 4.5 years of being a mother, I was in an office, and I got to tell you, I was miserable. I thought that it was going to be fine. And I didn't, when I had my first child, it was completely unplanned. I wasn't married. My husband and I weren't married at that point. I still had loads of student debt that I was swimming in, credit card debt that I had unfortunately just swimming in as well. Or as much as my mom taught us about budgeting during those career days and telling us not to have credit card debt, I did not listen, unfortunately. Now I have learned my lesson and don't have any credit card debt, but there was quite a bit there for a while. And so I just had to work, and I was, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids for several years. So I was just in an office job, just doing my thing. But then when my son came along, if I hadn't had any kids before, I thought 3 months seemed fine for a maternity leave, and I would just get back to work, and that would be it. And life would return to its normal state. But I did not anticipate the great and just life-changing love I would feel for my son. And ultimately, if you've heard any of my conversion story episodes that I've done, it was that love that I felt for my first child that made me start to realize that maybe I was wrong to be an atheist. There has to be something out there that would create this love, and there'd be a reason for it. So, I give birth to my son. There was like a flash of light in the room when I became a mother. I'm not even joking. I helped deliver my child. I pulled him up out by his shoulders, and I saw him, and there's just like a flash of light. And my first thought when I gave birth was, I will kill for you. I became like full mother bear. It just happened in that instant. And the idea of going back to work at that point was devastating. And then, the idea that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mother, that was the ultimate goal. That started very quickly to seep in. But at the time, again, we had debt. We weren't married. My husband is younger than I am by several years. So he was really just trying to get his career and his business going. So we just had not planned ahead or set up our finances in any way, shape, or form to be able to do this without causing catastrophic repercussions on our financial state. And that would certainly have not been prudential at that point. So I went back to work, and I hated all of it. I hated the fact that, I had a friend of ours nanny for us who was wonderful. I'm so, so grateful that we had a friend who was just getting out of school, couldn't find a job as a teacher. And she was so great with my firstborn, and then with my second, until she wound up getting a teaching job. So it was great that I didn't have to take my son anywhere. He, our nanny friend came to us. She loved him so, so very much. And I would get pictures throughout the day. I completely 100% trusted her. So, there was a lot of stress and the idea of who was going to care for my child as I went back to work, but at least I had that. It was hard to pay somebody to do something that I desperately wanted to do, but the bills were still there, and we just weren't able to make that sacrifice. We just couldn't make it work. And then my second comes along, and I was very clear throughout these pregnancies and the early months and years of each of my children, telling my now husband, we had gotten married when my son was 10 or 11 months old, that I wanted to stay home. That's all I wanted to do. I hated going to work. I hated leaving my child, even with somebody that I trusted and loved as a friend, when I wanted to be there for those milestones. And I wanted to be the one to make him smile throughout the day and put him down for his nap and be frustrated that he wasn't sleeping or whatever it was. I wanted to be that person. And yet again, another pregnancy came along, another maternity leave came and went. Back to the office I went. And, I emotionally checked out of my office job. I was a pretty terrible worker. If I had been Catholic at the time, I would have had to go to confession to confess how poorly I was using the time that I was being paid for. All I wanted to do was just be home. And I would work from home sometimes, like a day a week I would get to work from home, or half a day at least. So that was good. but it still wasn't enough. And then my third child came, and maternity leave came and went, and I still devastated that I had to go back to work. Somewhere in there, after my third child, I realized I was Catholic and went through the RCIA process, and I was introduced to the Memorare for the first time. And I absolutely love that prayer. It just, and knowing that Mary, coming to realize and know Mary, and be introduced to her as a Catholic convert, I started praying the Memorare, and I said, Mary, I want to be a mother all the time. I don't want the otherhood getting in the way. Please help me. If this is what you want from me, if this is what God's plan is for the procreation of children and from the marriage, help me, get me there. I want to be there. And I prayed that Memorare for several weeks, and something broke there. I wound up getting a job that was from home, limited hours, and I could do it. I could also kind of do it on the side. So I started working this at-home job, freelance editing, on my off time from my office job. And I started realizing that, if I put this extra money aside, that might pay for a little bit. And, if we wanted to get rid of the nanny, it would actually save us this much. And, I was going back and forth and creating this whole plan until I realized that I think I can make a good case for this. And at this point, my husband now is also Catholic and wanted me to stay home. He wanted me to be the full-time mom that I desired to be. So finally, I drew up a spreadsheet, all the expenses, and, my husband was nervous. And so was I, but I felt a great peace after praying so much to Mary and asking for her intercession. I had great peace that we could make this work. My husband, not so much, but he knew now, as being a Catholic convert and seeing how important, really his values shifted more towards the family during that time. And so he realized how important it was to have the mother be home and with her children. So he was coming around too, but he owns his own business, and it's not like we have a set paycheck. And so that was that's a lot of pressure to put on one person. Say, hey, every month you personally, you are an entrepreneur. You have your own business. You have to make the money. You're not getting paid from anybody. You're not getting a paycheck no matter what. Although, you can always get laid off from a job or lose a job. So it's not 100% either way, but that pressure there, I know my husband felt it acutely, but starting in the end of April of 2018, I got to put in my 2-week notice. And in early May, I got to pack up all my little things in a box for my cubicle and turn in my work computer and say goodbye. And I am so grateful and so just overjoyed that I was able to finally realize what I had wanted so badly for the 4.5 years prior. Was that easy going home? I really thought it was going to be like I was just going to smooth sail right into that transition. And I did not, as much as I wanted this. It was awful. And my poor husband, I finally got what I wanted, and all I did was lash out at him. So, but we worked through it, and we've all come away, the whole family, with a greater sense of the purpose of the stay-at-home mother, and what I need to do to make sure that I am fulfilling my role as a wife and a mother and a child of God all in one, without falling into any vices, laziness, complacency, boredom, anything like that. So I wanted to share today a few of the things that I've learned in that transition period. That was as I wanted to move out of the office job, what we needed to do as a family, and then also some tips on if you are transitioning into full-time home life, some ideas on how to make that go a little bit more smoothly. So even if that's what you want so desperately to be at home, there's still a transition. It's change, even the good change. It requires some self-awareness to get through it without a lot of anger or sadness or frustration or depressive feelings or thoughts or something like that. So if you are in the position where you are now working full-time in some kind of, or just a full-time job, it could be at home, it could be an office position, you might be paying for daycare or some kind of childcare. The first thing that I would recommend is prayer. And now, of course, we are not always going to get the answer that we want when we pray. God always does answer, because, I mean, how many times I prayed, or said it, I wasn't really praying to God yet, because I wasn't yet a Christian during most of this. Like, why can't I be home? Why can't I be home? I want to be home, please, universe, or whatever. Let me be home. And it just didn't happen. Now, of course, when I became Catholic and started praying the Memorare, I wound up with an opportunity that got me out of my office job very quickly within a couple of weeks. That, I would say, is unusual and cannot be expected once you start praying. But prayer will give you, the whole point of prayer is that whole, ask and ye shall receive. We might not receive the answer that we want, but we will receive an answer. And our prayers as creatures of God is to bring us more in line with God's will for us. So, ask anybody who's maybe a novice at prayer or just a novice in their faith, and they might start praying at first like, they have a fight with their husband, and they pray to God to have their husband see things their way, right? That could be like a novice, a novice prayer for somebody. But as you grow in your faith and you start knowing what God's will would be for you, that prayer of make my husband see my position, please God, might change or should change to help me to better understand my husband's position, and let us come to a better agreement on these things that we disagree on. You see, like, there's a growth there. We are going from me, what I want, give me now, to, a more love-based prayer that will align us with what God would want for us. So pray in a way that'll help you see God's plan for you and God's will for you. You can ask for big things from God, but also acknowledge that it's only going to happen according to God's will. I mean, we see this in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus says, Lord, take this cup from me, but your will be done. Right? So it's Jesus asking for something big. Don't make me go through these trials and struggles and tribulation, but Father, thy will be done. So just pray for big things. Pray that you can get out of your full-time office gig if that's what you want, but acknowledge the fact that you're not in charge. Ultimately, we're not in charge. So don't do anything rash at first. Just simply pray about it every day and say, God, whatever you want for me. I love saying this idea, God, be the hand to my glove. A glove is useless without the hand. It doesn't serve its purpose. So fill me up, use me as you want, and I will joyfully do whatever that is. And as you start to pray things like that, you may start to see other opportunities arise that'll help you move towards your dream of being a full-time stay-at-home mom. Or not, but you'll at least feel like you're doing this with purpose. So pray a lot. That is number one. Big, and that's a big number one. Don't neglect that. Pray throughout the day. Small things. Pray a thank you. Pray for help. Pray for these requests that you might have. It shouldn't just be this one time at night when you're, just kind of sifting through at the end of the day what happened during that day. It should be all the time. Secondly, it would be to take a look at your finances and be really honest here. I did a complete audit of my husband's bank account statements and my bank account statements. And I mean, how much we spent on Amazon, it was not pretty. I was like, wow, I didn't even know that. But if you haven't really bothered to do the budget lately or ever, do one and buffer it. Anything that you think it might be, add money onto it, right? Like, oh, the electricity bill is usually $200 a month during the winter time. Put $300 just to buffer, because you never know. I mean, that money that the money that you use, that you've put aside, that you think for let's say the electricity bill, you may wind up putting towards the dental bill or whatever, but at least it's covered under your general idea of how much you're going to be spending. So do your budget, and don't be aggressive about it. Don't think, oh, I think we could just get by with this, blah, blah, blah. No. Buffer it. And And then also make sure that you have a plan. If your husband, so my husband owns his own business and healthcare is crazy expensive if you are not working for somebody else. So if that's the case, do your research on that. We wound up with a couple different companies here and there and have settled on a Catholic health share company because I knew I had good insurance with my office job, but I didn't know how good it was until I went to see how much that particular same plan would cost outside of what my company at the time was footing for it. And it would have cost us twice as much as our mortgage every month. It would have cost $2,500 at the time. So that is crazy. And that wasn't even including dental and vision. So we went up with a health sharing company, and so far so good. But you have to have your bases covered. Do all the research, lay it all out, make spreadsheets, be that hyper organized person, even if you're not, it'll pay off later. Because you'll be able to see, and it's better to know. It's always better to know what the cost might be rather than to think that you'll just figure it out later and you'll be fine. Because remember, if you're trying to be a stay-at-home mom, you have to be prudent. There are other children or other people depending on you and your ability to financially provide for them. So do the finances and do it early and do it often. You might try it, say you, this month you're like, I'm going to do it. Okay, let's look at all the budget. We'll come up with a plan. We'll see where we're spending money, where we could possibly cut if we would need to, how much we would have to skim off of our fund budget or savings if I stayed home and we didn't have my income anymore. And then if you don't get to go home or you don't get to quit your job full on in the next couple of months, do it again when you think that the time is coming. So you might have to do it a couple times a year if it's going to be a while before you get to put your 2-week notice in at your job. Thirdly is make sure that you are leaving your job whenever that time comes on good terms. Don't burn bridges just because you're leaving and you're hoping you're never coming back. Don't tell off your coworker. We should not be doing that anyway because we should be charitable Christians. So you wouldn't want to burn a bridge anyway because that goes against our Catholic faith to be just downright mean. Of course, we can always be truthful. We should be truthful and honest, and that might mean saying harsh things sometimes, but you don't want to be mean for the sake of being mean, just to tell somebody off that you didn't like over those years out at the office. So leave on good terms. And also simply because you never know down the line, if you're open to, if you say something happens and you have to go back to work, it'd be better to, maybe possibly go back to where you had been. Not that you would want to, but just as far as emergencies go, we have to take that into account as well. All right. So pray. Be very accurate and honest about budgeting and think of things that you might not want to think about, like health insurance, dental, vision, life insurance, car insurance bills, whatever it is, freak accident things that you have to pay for, the roof, whatever. And then also when it is time to leave your job, leave on good terms. Okay, say you've put in your notice and you're transitioning. Before you do that, I would highly recommend, just as you took an audit of your finances, your personal finances, take an audit of your personal life. What you need to do to keep the home running and keep everybody happy and healthy and clean. How many days a week are you going to give your children a bath? How many times a week are you going to clean the bathroom or the kitchen floors or clean out the mess in the minivan? When are you going to pray? When are you going to spend time with your husband? When are you going to do bills? And if you want to be a blogger or maybe you have in your transition from full-time office employee to full-time stay-at-home mom, you have to, for a time, do some part-time work or at home, remote work. Plan it all out. See everything. Just write it all down first. Write down all the obligations that you might have, all the things that you would like to do, and then start cutting. Start seeing, well, that's actually not that important. I transfer along on my to-do list all the time and I never do it. Either get it done or stop putting in your to-do list and just, it's done now. You're just not going to do it. And then create kind of a master plan of how you're going to spend your days. I personally like block scheduling where you say, okay, I have 30-minute increments of my day and I follow it. So, from I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So 4:30 to 5:30, I pray. 5:30, around that time, 5:30 to 6:15, 6:30, when my kids get up, I do work for my husband because I still work for him. It's our family business. 6:30 to 8, it's all the kids stuff, breakfast, getting dressed, opening up the house for the day. And then I have free time where the kids play, and then, and so on. And I might practice piano or record a podcast or something like that. I do that. I have a block schedule, and it varies for each day, Monday through Friday, but I have a separate one for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And this keeps me in line. Now, if you are uncertain about how to, I should say, keep me in line and also keep me from being overwhelmed. Like, what am I supposed to do next? I feel like I have a lot of free time. Do I have a lot of free time? Should I be doing something right now? What's happening? But I can always refer back to my schedule. So I'm rooted throughout the day into something that needs to be done. And a lot of times, there are big chunks throughout the day of prayer. I pray a lot throughout the day. Quiet time for the kids, prayer time for me. Okay. So, if you need advice on how to handle block scheduling and what it is, how to get started on it, I would recommend, actually, Mariette from The Natural Catholic Mom had posted this book a little while ago, and I nabbed it, and I'm so glad I did. It's called A Mother's Rule. I'll put a link in the show notes too, where you can get it on Amazon. But that book has helped me considerably in creating a very good block schedule by looking at who I am as a person and what needs to be done based on several vocational things, like I'm a child of God first. Okay, what do I need to do for that? I am a parent. What do I need to do for that? I am a spouse. What do I need to do for that? And that helped really show what's necessary in those areas and what I can nix. And then really created a great block schedule that I have enjoyed following since. So create that. And I have a laminator that I got off Amazon for $30. I use it all the time. And I constantly have refined my to-do list, my block schedule for each day, and I just print it out and laminate it again. So you may have to play, you'll have to play with it. You won't, not even a may, you will have to play with it. It will change over time as you get used to what actually happens. You can put one thing on paper, what actually happens is a little bit different. So you tweak it. So you can, I would do a general idea of that before you even start your full-timeness at home, so that you can follow it from day one. That will help. That order in the day-to-day life will help you through the transition period. And I wish I had known that before. I had a general idea of what I would do with my kids during the day and what chores I would do, but I didn't do the full audit as I should have and really put it into a great schedule like I have done now at that time. And the change that I had, the changes of transitioning to something, even though I really wanted to be at home, it was overwhelming. And I wound up lashing out at my kids, my husband. It was a mess. So do that block scheduling, take the time for that. And then coming back again to point number one, pray again, pray all the way through that transition. That has to be number one. It wasn't until I was lashing out at everybody. And for me personally, I started praying the rosary. I had been praying the rosary every day. But during that transition period, it was really the sorrowful mysteries that got me and really made me stop and take account of how I was behaving. This is something I had wanted for a very long time. It was not fair of me to turn around and be so mean to the people that I left my job so I could be with more. And it was during actually the scourging at the pillar. I was like, man, how it felt like I just envisioned myself as being the one. It just happened to come to me during one of the prayer times that I had. What if every time that I was so mean and said hurtful things or got angry or impatient with my kids and my husband during that time, totally unwarranted. It was fair. I'm going through a change and that stuff, but so were they. And it wasn't fair for me to lash out at them. It was like I was the one holding the whip, lashing Jesus's back. And who was I to complain or be mean to my family whom I love so much when Jesus gave up his comfort and life for me? And my prayers, I had been praying the Memorare. My prayers had been answered just as I had wanted them to be answered. How blessed am I for that to be able to happen? And I was still angry. And how ungrateful I felt. And I cried. as it was typical during those few weeks there, but there were good tears. They were the tears that I needed to cry. And I turned around and it got so much better after that, but I really needed to pray through it. And if you don't have a good communication system with your husband yet as you're transitioning, you need to work on that anyway. I mean, as we talked, everything that I talked about with my husband, I told him what I was praying for. I told him what my schedule was going to be like, what I was planning on doing. I told him that I was excited. And then later on, when I was starting to lash out, I told him how sorry I was for doing that. We talked about his fears, that he was concerned about having to provide for everybody even though I had a part-time freelance editor job, it wasn't nearly making the same amount of money that I was making, as a mid-level employee at a large corporation. So we had to talk it all through, and it was very important. So if you're not sure about your communication skills with your husband now, work on those and set those expectations of what life will be like. As time has gone on, it's been about 2 years now of me staying at home with my children. I've become more of a Catholic and more of a very happy housewife and mother. And it's only through a lot of prayer, a lot of planning, and a lot of understanding of what the Catholic position is on a woman, who the woman is, and which actually I will be talking about more this coming weekend on a podcast episode. We just did what a Catholic man looks like with my husband, and he's going to join me as we talk about what a Catholic woman looks like. So he did a lot of the talking on this last episode. I will do a lot of the talking on this coming one, and I think you'll really enjoy that conversation as well. If you are in the middle of transitioning from a full-time or just an office worker to the stay-at-home mom life, my prayers are with you. If you are a woman who wants desperately to stay home but you can't figure it out, my prayers are so with you, because I know how frustrating it is when all you want to do is be home with your kids and you can't do it for whatever reason. Mine for a long time was finances. I should say too, I wound up using some of my 401k just to get rid of the remaining little bit of my credit card debt that I held onto for so long and cut down on my school debt. So I still have a little bit left, a couple more years of paying my monthly student loans. But here we are, and I'm home, and it's been 2 years, and we've done it, and it's been good. It's been really, really good, and I'm so glad I did. Of course, not every day is sunshine and rainbows. I still get very frustrated with my children. We still get bored. The laundry still piles up sometimes, but we're doing it, and I'm so glad that we are. And I know, even though my husband was hesitant at first about the finance part of it, we have made that work. And we are not drowning in any like debt or anything like that by any means, thankfully. So you can do it. I really think that it's what, the church has never said women can't work outside of the house, then we should all be just stay-at-home moms. But if we have children, we should want to be with them. All right. So even if you have to work outside of the home for financial reasons, that is fine. The church supports you. But yeah, when you're home, be present with your kids, put away the phone, do what you can in the meantime. Even if you can't be at home, take advantage fully of the time that you have. That I think is the most important thing that we can do, because it doesn't always go on our timetable. I certainly know I spent 4.5 years wishing that I could be with my children all the time, and it didn't happen. But I just try to make the best of it while I could see them, and it worked out. Clearly, it's worked out. So, my prayers to you. If you have any questions or any advice that you want to share about your own time transitioning from an office worker to a stay-at-home mom, I would love to hear it. I've been in this for 2 years now, but I always love to hear more advice or ideas or what worked or what didn't work for people. So you can reach out to me on Instagram at The Catholic Mama, or email me at Christine@thecatholicmama.com. Leave a note on the website. Anything you want to do, you can get in touch with me in a couple different ways. And if you have any questions or topics that you would like me to cover, in the show notes, there is a form that you can fill out, just your name and the question. It can be just a one-liner, whatever. And I will see about answering it in a future episode. All right, everyone. And don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode where we talk about the Catholic woman. Okay, everyone, until next time. Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy-to-understand grown-up answers, the pared-down but not talked-down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
God's beloved, I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
For listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.